Okay. Here we go. I am on. I apologize for the delay. But you guys are very holy Yidden, so it's okay.
Recording in progress.
Okay. As a reminder, we have a WhatsApp. So welcome. If you want to talk more, if you want to get more into the back and forth on things, please join us on the WhatsApp. Also, as always, if you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please see a professional. Learning is very important, and you should also do that, but you also need to seek professional help. If anyone has any questions, please get in touch with me and I can refer you. Also, this year will be Le'ela Nishmas Yitzchak Kaddish ben Hanan. That's my father. May Hashem have an aliyah. Okay. Yesterday, we talked about weapons, the weapons of war. We talked about a particular weapon, but to recap very quickly, the weapons that we have to have ready to fight this Yetzer Hara in particular, the weapons are, very simply and amazingly simply, they are Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. And you may never have thought that these were the weapons that you could use. They're almost like, does a fish notice that there's water all around it? Because they're just so used to thinking of water as air. Like, we don't necessarily feel the air around us unless there's a wind, but we are surrounded by oxygen and air at all times. The same thing, it's like we can get so used to certain things in our lives, things that are part of our like basic understanding of what it means to be a Yid. You know, Pirkei Avos, which is a fundamental sefer, fundamental text. And you know, we say this Vart, Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim are the three pillars that hold up the entire world. And then it's like, yeah, of course, I get it. But we never really thought, I personally never really thought to use them as weapons. But with the right perspective, and we talked about what the Piasats and the Rebbe used to talk about, like really crafting your powers of imagination in a way to use it to generate emotional responses and connection to Ruchnius. And we talked about using these weapons in such a way. So let's return to the platform in our minds. The platform in our minds, the stage is set. We have the soldier. The soldier who was fighting the enemy, who was hiding in the bushes in the jungle. And he's bruised and he's bloody and he's stabbed and his blood pouring, but he's still in the fight. Because that's the key to all of this, is to stay in the fight. It's not about, there's no question of win or lose. There's just win, do for Kvod Shemayim. That's it. That's all that's there. And we talked about the first weapon being Torah, which is Keneged, his sword that you have to keep sharp at all times. And we talked about learning to take time and learn Torah, even if it's just a short amount of time, even if it's for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, and to get yourself into flow state. We talked about flow state, where you are so zoned in and you're just so totally deep in that like you don't even notice what's going on around you. And the way you do that, according to Mary Reb Berkowitz, and many tzaddikim, the Sfarim, that you need to find Torah that you are like mamish connected to, that's like talking to your soul. So whatever that may be. And I was thinking about it since yesterday we talked about it, that it could be, I'm sure no one here who is listening, but it could be that there's a person who went through, his whole life thinking that like, I'm only ever going to learn Gemara, and I'm only ever going to learn, do Shna. Of course, you're going to do Shnai, Mikra, V'Targum, and maybe a basic halacha, but that's like all there really is. And Chas v'Shalom, like there's a Yam Shel Torah out there. And yeah, Gemara is foundational, and you should be exposed to it, and you should learn it. And that's why we really like the bulk of our yeshiva years are in Gemara, because that's really like the immersion process. But there are people out there that are not Gemara Yidden, and that's okay. I think Rav Noach Weinberg, who Shalom, who ran Eshet Torah, started Eshet Torah. So when he was looking for Rebbeim to teach these kids that were coming to the yeshiva who had no background in Yiddishkeit, one of the things that he would do is that he looked for, let's say he needed a Rebbe to teach Chumash, so he would look for the person that believed that Chumash is the be-all, end-all. All there is Chumash. Chumash is the most important thing to learn. Not like Chas v'Shalom, not that there's nothing else to learn, but like Chumash is like the number one thing. And then he would find that guy to teach Chumash. And then there was a guy, he looked for a Rebbe to teach Gemara. But he didn't want just a Gemara teacher. He wanted to find the Rebbe that like everything is Gemara. The whole world, his whole world, the be-all, end-all is Gemara. And then someone to teach Halacha. The be-all, end-all is Halacha. And it's actually interesting, my Rabbi Berkowitz, was running the Smicha program in Eshet Torah when it started, and he was that person that everything is about halacha. Also, he's very into hashkafa. Everything is about hashkafa. He could be two at the same time. It's interesting that Rabbi Berkowitz is the Rosh Hashiva of Eshet Torah now, and he truly embodied that message, that mission of Reb Noach Weinberg. But the key is to find the Torah that's yours and then just hone it, sharpen it, care for it. Like the samurai have the special ritual of taking care of their sword, so too, build yourself a ritual. Find, and I was actually, but I was listening to a podcast once about someone who was talking about notebooks, having a personal notebook. And he said that if you spend money on a cheap notebook, you can buy for even today's with inflation prices, you can buy for 50 cents, those marble covered notebooks or the spiral bound notebooks at the dollar store, and that's very cheap paper, and it's usable for doing work in school and such, but there's just not really a feeling of I really love this notebook. But if you go out and you can go online, you can go to they actually have special stationery stores, and you can buy a fancy notebook, a properly bound notebook. And has nice pages, it has a cream tone to it, it feels nice to write on it, and then you go out and buy yourself a nice pen. So the likelihood of you really taking a writing practice or taking your notes seriously, whether you're journaling or you're writing notes on projects, so that it creates an investment in the stuff that you're working on. And I don't want to go further. I think you all understand where I'm going with this, that when we're honing our minds in Torah, we're honing this weapon, this sword, this knife, this Excalibur, right? And I think about the King Arthur story where he pulls Excalibur out of the stone. All of us, our Excalibur is stuck in rocks. This head has become just thick as a rock, but inside is just the Excalibur waiting to be pulled. And your Excalibur, your sword, is the Torah that you connect to, and with that you can get rid of the rocks and create a most formidable weapon to ever be seen. But the only way to do that is finding your Torah, and I highly recommend creating a ritual out of it. Get a sefer. I literally was in a Sfarim store the other day, and I was getting tzitzis for my son, and a friend of mine walked in, and he was looking to learn Talmud Devaira. He heard about learning Talmud Devaira, he started learning Chavrusa with somebody, and then he bought, the art school just came out with a new version of Talmud Devaira. He's like, I'm getting a new sefer, and I'm just gonna sit with it, and the art school has there's extra explanations and perushim in the back of it, and he created a ritual for his seder of Talmud Devaira. He could have just sat down on the shiur and then, whatever they provided, he'll listen, or maybe he'll download some sheets or get a regular Talmud Devaira and figure it out. It's no, he found the sefer and he sat with it and he prepared it beforehand, and there's a whole avodah involved in the preparation to get yourself into Torah. And when you do that, the more avodadik your preparation is to get to your Torah that you're going to spend 15 minutes a day, that blade, that sharp blade that you're going to use as your weapon, the more investment you put into that, the more ownership you're going to have with it. So I highly recommend, and again, it doesn't have to necessarily be a financial investment, but time investment is probably even much more valuable, where you might need to borrow the sefer, or you might need to go to the Beis Medrash and use the sefer from the library there, but to carve out a time and you prepare beforehand and you sit with your wife and you say, I'm going to learn Talmud Devaira, or I'm going to just do Shnai Mikra V'Echa Targum, because everyone's supposed to do that every single day, every single week. And I'm not going to ask for a raise of hands, but we're all adults. We all know what's really going on in the world. Not everyone's doing it. So maybe that's your thing, maybe that's your avodah, but you sit with your wife and you say, this is the avodah that I'm working on, and I'm going to carve out this time. And your wife doesn't get very excited. I mean, if you have a history of like not following through, then maybe your wife won't get excited. But really, follow through on this, and your wife will become excited as she sees you progress. Your kids, let them know, like, this is Tati's time to like sit and learn. Like, maybe do it at home or go to shul, whatever it is, but carve that time. Maybe find a spot in your house, even if maybe someone's in a smaller apartment, right? And you don't have like your own office space or like a library. Like, pick a different chair. Maybe it's your, not the couch or like some comfortable lounge spot, but like maybe it is your seat at the dining room table. Maybe it's a different seat where like you're facing the wall or a window and it's like your comfortable spot, like not too comfortable like you get lost in the couch, but it's your space to really carve, like make it ritualistic, and go as nutty and as ritualistic as you want, because this is yours, it's your weapon. And lahavdil, like, the soldiers used to do, like they would, when they went into war, like soldiers would make their weapon their own. They would write little messages on it. They would adjust the sights just so according to the way they liked it. They would adjust this according to the way they liked it. They would adjust that according to the way they liked it. They made their weapon their own. And because when you do that and you feel more close to it, you're more investment in it, and you're going to be using it more appropriately. It'll kind of be more of an extension of you. And that's the goal here, is to make Torah an extension of you. So that was yesterday. Now we're going to jump into the next weapon. The next weapon, as obviously we said, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. So the next weapon is a very difficult one. This is a hard one. It's a hard one for me. I don't know, maybe you guys are all holding. The hard one for me. It's Avodah. Avodah is coming from, it's a whole different type of weapon than Torah. So I want you to imagine the soldier again. So the soldier is holding, in one hand, he's holding his sword. And in the other hand, he has his M16 machine gun. The M16 machine gun that shoots bullets far and wide. That is Avodah. And what is Avodah? I'm going into the text here. Avodah Shebelev. Avodah Shebelev, what does that mean? Zu Tefillah. Avodah is Avodah Shebelev, like really work of the heart, right? We're moving away from the moyach, we're working on the heart, and that is specifically tefillah. And just like tefillah, when you're saying your tefillah, you're pushing out your ratzon and trying to mirror Hashem's ratzon, you're pushing it out into the world. Imagine that's literally like a gun, and you're shooting it out to Hashem, to the world. You're shooting on these, every single word of tefillah is the bullets in the magazine, in the chamber. And I want you to, it's very important, we got to go back to that stage and imagine yourself. So now you got in one hand your sword. I like the ninja sword, I like that katana in one hand, that's your right hand. You've been sharpening it with your learning. The other hand you're holding in one hand, you're doing this one-handed because you're the only soldier left in the platoon. And you're standing there, but it's you between the worst evil and the rest of the world, and you have to save it. And you're holding the machine gun in the other hand, firing into the bushes. And obviously, the muscle kind of dies out there because you're not really using the gun to fire at the enemy, using the gun to fire at Hashem, your tefillah, so that Hashem gives you the strength to overpower the enemy. But get into that zone. It's very important to have that muscle. You got wounds, bullet holes, and slash wounds everywhere. You're bleeding, right? Like you're bleeding, but that blood is what's going to give you life. That blood is going to give you life, and you're davening and you're honing your blade. So we're going to go deep into davening a little bit. L'oira rigshay kodesh. It's to inspire holy emotions. Shebepnimis nefesh Yisraeli. That's inside the innermost part of the soul of a yid. And b'shtabchus halev, and in an outpouring of your heart. V'hishtoikikus, and a deep yearning. V'slavos eish, and an inflaming fire. Eish kodesh, an inflaming holy fire. Hamachaba eish hataiva, that will put out the fire of taiva. Kol min ahavas v'hashtoikikus min nefesh abahamis. And there are all kinds of loves and desires and yearnings, right, that are in the nefesh abahamis, and tefillah will can engulf you in the holy flames to protect you from that. And like the Beis Avram said, B'Shem Tzadikim, ala pasuk, on the pasuk in Tehillim, it's Tehillim Nun Aleph, and this was the Kapit of Tehillim that David says as a tshuva for the chet with Bathsheba. So this is Mizmar LeDavid, Kasher Ba El Bathsheba, when he came to Bathsheba and he did the sin. And obviously I'm not going to go into the whole sugya there, it's not as simple and clear cut. Obviously, we're talking about David Melech, who's a massive tzaddik. It's very funny. When I was doing Kiruv, my Kiruv days, I had an older guy I was learning with. He was about in his 60s, and he just maybe I shouldn't say the story, but he actually passed away. He was a very special yid. He came a lot to our programs and learning, but he had no background in Torah. But he came to us and learned, and he's like, "Hey, Adam, I'm going to call you Adam. I'm not going to call you Rabbi. I'm just going to call you Adam. But let's be honest. If King David can do what he did, I ain't that bad." It was funny. Because I started trying to go through the whole sugya, understand David HaMelech is a different thing. But then I stopped and I was like, you know what? He's connecting to David HaMelech right now. Yeah, he missed the boat and he thinks David HaMelech has done the same prust things that he has done in his life. But he's just a yid trying to connect, and that's his way. Michael, hopefully David HaMelech is Michael me on his covet, which I'm sure he would. David HaMelech seems like he would be the kind of person that would, the tzaddik that he was. But the point is, though, there was some kind of chet, and obviously not a chet that we understand on a simple human level. It was a higher level. But he said a kaput Tehillim on this. Why? What was the idea? Kasher, and the Mizmor LeDavid actually starts, Mizmor LeDavid, Kasher Ba El Baspari, like when he went, there's the words of the Tehillim, like when he went to to Bathsheba. So what this pshat means from the Beis Avram, he's saying that Sheba Oisai Regesh, the Hislavus, the Dvar Avera, that in that same level of emotion and Hislavus, that engulfing fire for Dvar Avera, Kasher Ba Bathsheba, that he came to Bathsheba with, Cain Amar Mizmar Zeh. So too afterwards, when the Navi Nasan came to him and told him what you did was wrong, that same hargasha, that same feeling, he used to make this kapitel Tehillim, to make this parak Tehillim. And I think it's a very important point that when we're saying al chetz on Yom Kippur, when we're doing our own vidui, or we're trying to do tshuva in our own way, whatever way that may be, there's the sin that's just got you all fired up, and then now you feel bad, now you have guilt and shame and all the rest. And you're like, okay, so I need to do vidui, I need to be kabbalah asid, I need to say tehillim, I need to daven to Hashem. But you have to ask yourself, are you at the same passion level as when you did the sin? Remember, it's avodah shebelev, right? So you can say the words, and it would be genuine. I'm not even talking about someone who's not genuine. It would be genuine. You honest to God, believe that what you did was wrong, and you want to get absolution from it. But think to yourself, are you feeling the same kind of charata on the same level of emotional intensity as when you did the avera? And what's crazy about averas is that you can launch into the highest level of emotional intensity in an Avera in 0.2 seconds. Like you're like regular run of the mill, everything's fine, then you get like the trigger, and then all of a sudden, boom, your heart's aflame, your blood's pounding in your head, and you're just like in it, ready to do the Avera. And then you do this Avera with Hislavos. Not you, but maybe someone you know. Chas v'shalom, right? You're all very holy. And then when you want to go fix it, are you at the same spot? Are you like, yeah, you feel bad and it's bad and it's not great and it's serious and you're taking it seriously and you're dominating your heart out, but like honest with yourself, like you need to get to that same level of emotional intensity, and that's what David Melch is teaching us. But that this mizmar was the same level of emotional intensity as when he did the chet, whatever that was, on whatever level that was. Tshuva, and this is what David is showing us, to show us how to do tshuva, to single out and to enter with love, a hergish l'soicha kedusha, and emotion into and bring that all into kedusha. U'espalel b'shvichas nefesh, and to daven with an outpouring of your soul, the fun of Yisbarach, in front of Hashem. Yeah, it's like you could take it seriously, but you got to be emotional about it. And again, like I'm going to go with the PSS and the Rebbe on this. Like you need to imagine yourself, like the damage you caused and the distance, and again, not to a place where you get to the depression. Obviously, that's a different situation. But like that closeness that you wanted with Hashem that's now lost because of the Avera, like with the intensity to daven to get it back, and to even inspire your heart to start crying, and not performative crying. I know, in shul, you always hear those guys. Again, you can't really know what's real and what's not, so it's not really for us to judge. But we kind of have a feeling that maybe not everybody who's krechzing and croaking during davening on Yom Naraim is actually serious. I mean, hopefully they are, and it probably depends where you're davening. I mean, I davened once Rosh Hashanah. My uncle, he lives in Bnei Brak, and he davens by Rabbi Tzach Zilberstein. And I davened Rosh Hashanah there, and it was mamish. It was Ayim B'Nair. It was like a very, very high experience. It was a very high experience. And when I was davening there was a lady who was crying, and the men were shushing her, and like loud sobs, like during davening. It was like middle of the heart of Bnei Brak, 250 men there davening, and like. Rabbi Zilberstein's at the top, like so. Like half the crowd are like Roshei Kolim and Roshei Yeshivas on their own, like very big people there, and there was a lot of crying and a lot of intensity there. And there was this one lady just screaming and crying, and people were shushing her, and people were saying, stop, it's not appropriate, whatever it is. And my uncle told me later that actually she had just become an almana, and it was legit crying. Legit crying. No one should ever have to experience that. But what was I saying? So a lot of times we think it's fake, and it turns out people were getting annoyed by her, but it was actually real. It was really real. But we ourselves, we should get into an emotional state and inspire ourselves to cry. Not wait for Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah to do it, but now, and daven, and if we're not there to daven to get there, sha'afal bi'amuva. Sha'al perish hamuva mehabesh, like it was brought down by the Besht, by the Baal Shem Tov Zechus Yagen Aleinu, and also the Magen HaMedrash, and the Magen HaMedrash Zechus Yagen Aleinu. Hariz min hatikunim hagdolim lepagam bris kodesh. It's one of the biggest tikunim to one of the major tikunim to take care of the Gam Bris Kodesh is by crying. Kamay Shapir Sha'al perish Shemais, like we say in Shemais. And this is later on, I believe this is in Parshas Mishpatim, I believe. Shemais Chabez, Mlayascha, Udima'echa, Lois Acher. It's talking about when you're taking in the harvest. When you're taking the harvest, you got to make sure to skim off the top, your meiser. Right? Mlayascha is your skimming, Udima'echa of your yield, your first yield. Lois Acher, don't delay in doing that. But obviously, the Chassidim would take this pasuk because it's written in an interesting way and kind of turn it around. And the way they would learn it up is an avodah and tefillah, that imrin tzenechalim leos mash pegamta that if you have a desire to skim off, to carve out of your sense of yourself, this pigam of pigam bris, right, and things that had left v'yatza levatala, and even on a level where someone was moitzizer levatala, ha'etza, the advice, the answer to this, don't delay with your cry, with your tears. Demecha could be your yield, but demais is also another word for tears. So don't delay your tears. Cry. Cry is a big tikkun to take care of these issues. And that's also interesting. The pasuk says, don't delay in skimming off what you need to take off. And then the end of the pasuk says, it's like a different halacha. It's and b'char b'necha titenli. I mean, it's kind of the same topic, but it's a different thing. Like your firstborn son, you give to me, right? And that's pidyon ben. So what it's saying is, like, if you are trying to carve out the pigam, and by doing that you start to cry, then through that b'char b'necha titenli. Not talking. This is like a deeper pshat. That the firstborn children, your firstborn children, will be given to me. What does that mean? Tachzir hanitzotzes hakedoshos l'sharsham. That you'll be returning these nitzotzes that were lost in doing the pigam. You'll return them. You're like returning these children, because they technically could have been children. You're returning them, these sparks of holiness that could have been children, back to Hashem through crying in earnest. Right? And dihine hapigam. And we talked about this, that's begam maschil b'moyach. It starts in the moyach. It starts in the mind. V'nimshach l'lev. And it gets schlepped down to the heart. V'hadimais me'umka deliba. That tears from the depths of your heart. Gam heim koyram mehamoyach u'boy ma'alev. So too, the same way the pigam starts in the mind, and then it goes to the lave, and then obviously ends up into action, like we talked about the addiction cycle. So too, the way to clear it up is that the tears, the real deep tears, they also start in the moyach, because it's about your thoughts that are causing this emotional state. You're controlling this emotional state, and you're causing yourself to get very heightened emotionally, and it's causing you to start to cry, and obviously you're crying out of your head. Right? But real tears, it's not just the actual literal tears, but that it's reaching down into your lave. And any type of crying that doesn't unite the mind and the heart together, this is called a cheap cry. I think that's what it means. Yeah, like a cheap cry, your crocodile tears. There's nothing after it. There's nothing there. It's just tears, but nothing going on. I still, if anyone can explain to me, maybe on the chat, what does crocodile tears mean? Like, why is that a phrase? What does that mean? Do crocodiles cry? I don't know. I don't know what the connection is, but crocodile tears mean, right, that they're not really meaningful. They just look like you're crying, but you're not. So those aren't going to do anything. Like, it has to be real crying that goes to the depth of your heart. Uchlal, Maimer, Rabbi Sena Kedoshim, Kasav Yechatzu Mayim. There's a pasuk. I'm trying to remember where the pasuk is. I did pull it up earlier, so give me one moment. Second, wait. I appreciate your patience. Yeah, it's based on a pasuk in Shemais about the Kohanim washing themselves and cleaning themselves for the avodah. But it says in a very interesting lashon. It says, and unfortunately, just the way the Nesivos Shalom is written, not always does it give a source. I have to look this up separately. So Yechatzu Mayim is like washing. It sounds like it means washing off the water, right? And the pasuk the Rachatzu Aranov mimenu kasudem asagleim Yechatzu mayim, it's like using water to wash off the water. But that's not what we're doing. We're washing off dirt, or we're washing our hands like negelvas, or we're washing off, let's say, the ruach ra, or something like that. We're washing something else off. But the lashon of the pasuk sounds like you're washing off water. So what does this mean? Shetzarach lirchos is a mayim ha'elu, that you need to wash off the fake crying. This water that's not real crying, you need to wash that off. Aval bechia mikir salev, but crying that comes directly from the heart, mitar begamim. That's going to purify begamim. That's going to purify everything. Okay, so we have one more weapon left. One more weapon left. It's actually a much longer paragraph, and we're not going to be able to finish it tonight. So I'm just going to talk a few minutes about that third weapon, and we have a little bit of a problem. We're going to go into the depth of it tomorrow, but we're going to talk a little bit, because I was thinking about this. We have a little bit of an issue. We have two hands, right? You remember, we're the soldier on that stage, on that platform in our minds. We're imagining we're in the bush, and Charlie's out there ready to kill us. Ready to kill us. And we got a blade in one hand, we talked about sharpening and honing that. And then now in our other hand, we have our gun that's going to shoot tefillas. We have no hands left for our third weapon. What are we going to do with the third weapon? So first of all, to just take a moment to talk about tefillah. This is something that this generation struggles with a lot. The weapon, the knife weapon, the Torah weapon, yeah, it's hard to do technically because you need to get yourself into flow state. You have to create a ritual for it. But it's something that's easily accessible. Like the access to Torah we have in our generation is unbelievable, really unbelievable. Whether you're going to take it seriously or not, that's a choice that you have to make. But it's easily accessible. But tefillah is the kind of thing. It's like it doesn't matter how many books you have, how many siddurim you have, how many svarim on tefillah you have. You have to tap in. You got to peel back some of those layers of your heart, and you got to find like the kernel of your neshama. You got to open that up, and that's hard. That's really, really hard. And I was learning with Rabbi Danishevsky. Rabbi Danishevsky is the kind of the nasi of Avodas Alev. We have an organization here in Chicago where I'm giving a share as part of that organization, but he's our nasi of the organization. So he gives a share, and he was talking about this concept of, why it's so hard to talk to Hashem. It's mamish hard to talk to Hashem. And maybe one of the reasons, there's many reasons, but we're very distracted in this generation. It's very hard to be focused. And one of the reasons why we can't talk to Hashem is because, let's be honest for a second, let's look into the relationships that we have with family, with friends. Like, how tuned in and zoned in are people when we talk to them? I don't want to start bashing anybody. Everyone's got a different situation, and Bez Hashem, we have people in our lives that really listen to us when we're talking at a deep level. But let's be honest, in the world, how many people really have someone that could set an example of what it means to listen? So I would say not very many. And if we grow up our whole lives never being around people that are truly listening to us, then how are we to believe that Hashem is listening to us? No, of course Hashem is listening to us. But in our own heads, it's just so impossible for many of us to imagine that He's listening to us, because we've never seen that mimicked in the world. And then now let's think about ourselves. We're fathers, we're friends, we're sons. Have we listened properly to the people around us so that they can have an example of what it means to be listened to? So that they can have a picture and a mashal, so that when they're talking to Hashem, they can feel listened to. And I think that trauma and that dysfunction that we have particularly in our generation, is fueling this issue that we have when it comes to davening. Because when we're davening and we're trying to get our heads into a space where we really think that Hashem is listening to us when we talk, it's so hard to believe it sometimes. And then when you don't think someone's listening to you, then you stop talking. We know this with kids. It's like, If you don't listen to your kids when they're young and give them the time of day, even though they're talking about whatever narishkeit, stupidity, when they become teens, they're not listening to you. They're done. You have a very short window to really build a bond, and it's always possible to build it later, but it's so much harder. I mean, talking from experience, like I have teens, and I wouldn't call myself perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm growing and I'm learning, and maybe it's because I turned 40 this year, and I'm getting a little bit more bina in my life, and I'm really processing everything. But like really looking back and like looking at the relationships that I've built, like was I really the example for somebody to be a listener, so that when they then go ahead, when my children go and talk to Hashem, that they could feel like someone's listening to them. Particularly like if you're busy and you got a job and you're on the phone, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're wealthy. It doesn't matter if you're an asken. It doesn't matter if you're a rav. It doesn't matter any of this. Like we all have reasons and excuses why we're busy and not giving our kids and our wives our full attention. But are we really the best examples for being like a Hashem who listens? I don't know, something to think about. But that's something to work on, really. And I think that's really why we do struggle with tefillah. But in any case, so that's the thing with tefillah. Like maybe the first step is to practice listening. Practice listening to the people around you. It's a good homework for you. Pick a conversation with your wife and just tone it. Put your phone in a different room and just zone right in. And truth be told, when you build that kind of relationship with your wife, it's for sure going to also help you clean up any began bris issues. Okay, but the problem is we only have two hands, and we have the knife in one hand, the sword in one hand, and we have the machine gun in the other hand. So the third weapon is Gemilas Chasadim. Where does that go? What hand does that go? We only have two hands. So how are we going to get the imagination? So I want to just set you off on the right path, and then we'll end here. But the path is as this. Remember, he's a soldier in a war. That third weapon is his uniform. It's that flag on his patch, that Israeli flag, when he's going house to house and looking for the terrorists. And he's all bloodied and beaten and stabbed, but he's still in the fight. It's his marching orders. That whole raison d'etre, the reason of being of a Yid, is Gemilas Chasadim. That's our mission. My Rebbe says all the time that we're only here in this world, and we talked about it earlier, we're only here in this world to break our midas, to break our bad midas, and to build good midas. And that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts us in a physical body so that it's very distracting and it's a real avodah to kind of rise above. And the way we rise above is just Gemilas Chasadim. And we're going to go a little bit into depth tomorrow about what exactly that means. So before we end, anyone have any questions? Anyone have any comments on what we discussed tonight? All right, if you think of something later, please join the chat, and we really get into the depth of this. Otherwise, have a very, very heilig rest of your day. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys tomorrow.
Recording stopped.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Someone had a question? Hello? I know someone just texted me a question. I'm going to get to it as soon as I can.